Okay, Grandmom. First question is, when were you born?
I was born July the 10th, 1928. Although all my life I was told my birthday was July the 11th. Mm-hmm. So actually that's what I celebrate.
Mm-hmm. Which one do you celebrate now?
The 11th, and now I'm going to celebrate the 10th and the 11th.
There you go. You deserve it. Did your parents tell you anything about the day you were born? Anything special?
No, they didn't. Although I do think the mix-up about my birthday, I was probably born at midnight, but my father all my life told me my birthday was July the 11th, so I believed him, of course. But then when I took a trip to Italy, and when I was 80 years old, I had to send for a copy of my birth certificate, and when I received it, it said July the 10th is my birthday. But I kept the 11th because, I mean, for 80 years I was, I had the 11th. So.
Where were you born?
I was born in St. Agnes Hospital in South Philadelphia.
Do you know why you were given the first and middle name that you have?
I think I had my middle name Elizabeth because my aunt's name was Elizabeth. Mm-hmm. I think that's why. Catherine was my mother's name and my grandmother's name.
Ah.
But when I was growing up, my grandmother they called Katie. My mother was nicknamed Kitty, and my nickname was Cassie, which most of my family calls me.
What was the house you grew up in like?
I grew up we lived in a small house in South Philadelphia when I was born. I was born I lived with my grandparents in South Philadelphia. And I think when I was about 3, we moved to Kensington. And I lived on Allegheny Avenue. It was a very nice house. It was big, pretty big. And the street was Allegheny Avenue was a really nice street, real wide. And it was a lovely neighborhood at that time.
Was it a row home or was it a single?
It was a row home.
Did you guys all have your own bedrooms or did you share?
Oh, no. No, it had 3 bedrooms. And I had, my sister Marie was 3 years younger than me. My brother was 8 years, and my sister Roseanne was 13 years younger than me. So we had shared rooms, and then at one point my mother's mother and 3 brothers and sister moved in with us. So it was a little crowd, but we all got along fine.
What was the neighborhood you grew up in like at the time?
At the time when I grew up, it was a very, very nice neighborhood. The people were really nice, and I always tell the story that across the street, the district attorney lived. His name was Gerald Gleason, and they had a maid, because my brother always played with his son. So, it was a very nice neighborhood, and the reason I say that is because now it is not very nice, and people forget, but I remember it was really nice.
What, Kensington is that?
Allegheny Avenue. It's called Kensington.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Was it like, was there a certain nationality that lived in that neighborhood?
Mostly in Kensington, mostly Irish people lived. Very few Italians. I don't remember. My father was born in Italy, mm-hmm. and we had an Italian name, so we kind of stood out in the. My mother was Irish, but because of our name and all, I guess. But mostly Irish people lived there, in the section I lived in.
It's so funny that back then it was a lot of like the same nationalities were together, Now
it is that way, and there was a section where further down where a lot of Polish people lived, and the Italian people all lived in South Philadelphia where I was born.
And still, a lot of them still do.
That's the same.
Mm-hmm. What is your first, most vivid memory?
Well, I remember when I was going to the Ascension School, I always made fudge and molasses candy on the weekend. My friends would come and sit on the step, and we'd play games like what time is it, and things. It's called a game. What time is it? And if you guessed the time that was in the leaders in their head, then it was your turn to come and stand up and ask what time was it. And I would bring the candy out, and they would all eat. the candy.
How old were you?
11.
What were your parents' names?
My father's name was Faust, or Frank Cianchetta, and my mother's name was Catherine. Anastasia was her middle name.
Oh, that's pretty.
And her maiden name was Farrell.
Where and when were they born?
My father was born in Sulmona, Italy. I don't know exactly, I think about 1905, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother was born in Richmond, Pennsylvania, right in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
The section was called Richmond, but it was Philadelphia. She was born, he was 6 years older than her, so her birthday was March 12th, and my father's birthday was July the 26th.
Who was stricter?
Who was stricter? My father, although he wasn't very strict, but he was stricter than my mother.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember anything you did that you were disciplined for?
Yes, I think I've told the story a few times. I was little, I guess I was about 9, maybe, I don't know exact age, but I didn't like liver, and they always told me it was steak, but when I tasted it, I knew it was liver. So my father never made us sit there and eat, but I think he was tired of me saying I wouldn't eat it, so he told me I had to sit with my dinner there, and I had to sit until I ate it. So I sat there, and I remember him leaving the room, and all of a sudden something told me to do. I took my hand and I knocked the dish on the floor. But they never gave me liver again.
How did your family earn money? And were you richer, poorer, or the same as the other families in your neighborhood?
Well, I think we had a little more than most families in our neighborhood. My father was an artist, and he was the only gold leaf letterer in Philadelphia. And gold leaf lettering was very expensive then. And in fact, there was a hotel downtown called the Ritz-Carlton, not the one that's there now, but it was years ago. And he did all the gold leaf lettering on their door. And there was a perfume shop right across from Rittenhouse Square. It was called the Cezanne Perfume Shop, and he did all the gold leaf lettering on their windows. And he worked for a neon sign company. So he made, I think, more money than most people in my neighborhood, but we weren't rich. Mm-hmm. But he made a good living.
And your mom didn't work?
My mother didn't work. No.
Did most women not work then?
Most women didn't work.
How many siblings did you have, and how far apart in age were they from you?
Well, my sister Marie was 3 years younger than me. My brother John was 8 years younger, and my sister Roseanne was 13 years younger than me.
Do you have any specific childhood memories of them?
About them? Mm-hmm. Yes. I was the oldest, so I would watch them sometime, and my brother would sit on my head with a pillow and smother me, and I always would tell him I was going to tell him, but I didn't. And he would torture my sister Roseanne when she was little. He'd walk around the table and call her Shmoo, and she'd scream because she didn't like it. But we played games, and we got along really pretty well.
Did you have grandparents that you knew?
Yes, well, my father's mother and father came from Italy, so they didn't speak English, but I knew them. But they died when I was around 12 years old. And my mother's father I didn't know because he died when she was just a baby, I think. And my grandmother, though I knew well, her name was Katie Farrell, and she came to live with us for a while. And she was funny. She and I always would go to the movies together, and we went to see Wuthering Heights. And when we came out, she said, "From now on, I'm going to call you Kathy instead of Cassie." We would take her to the beach. We would go to Wildwood in the summer, and she'd wear her hat and a long dress and sweater to the beach. She was She was very nice.
Was she born in America?
She was born in America, yeah.
And her husband?
Yes, yes. But she was very religious. If you came to her house and you weren't a Catholic, she would spray holy water on you. She'd throw holy water on you.
Oh my God. What was your dad's parents' names?
Oh, my grandmother's name was Concetta, and my grandfather's name was John Giovanni.
And your mom's dad's name, what was his
name? Joseph Farrell.
What were you like as a child, and what did you do for fun?
I was quiet, but I wasn't afraid of things, but I was quiet. We used to play jumping rope and jacks, and we'd sit on the step and play games, like I said, it was called time. We would do things like that. We used to have races around the block. We'd meet in front of a house. Usually I would run. I could run fast. I was little, and I had a boy would be on one side, I would be on the other, and we'd each run different ways around and see who got back first. And I always won. I did. I led the May procession at school when I was in the first grade because I was the smallest one there.
What school did you go to?
I went to the Ascension School in Kensington on Westmoreland Street.
Do you know, is it still there?
It's still there, but it's out of commission now because it's very bad neighborhood now around there. It was a beautiful church. It had the basement and the top where I was married there too. And it looked like a cathedral. It was so beautiful. Wow. And now it's destroyed.
That's sad. Did you have any favorite toys?
I had a doll called Bubbles. I love that doll. That's mainly the only one I remember really well.
What did you wear mostly?
Well, we wore dresses. You never wore, like, women didn't wear long pants or anything like that. Mm-hmm. We wore dresses all the time.
Did you own pants though, or
no? In the summer we had shorts, but we didn't have pants. We never wore them. We only wore dresses.
Even in the winter?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, we wore stockings.
Oh my gosh.
We always wore long stockings.
Did you have any responsibilities at home, like chores or anything?
I was the oldest, and so I took care of a lot of things at home. Mm-hmm. I used to clean and watch my brothers and sisters, things like that.
Did you get an allowance?
Oh no, I don't remember getting an allowance, no. But I mean, my father would give us money to go to the store and all, but we didn't get an allowance, no.
Were you a good student?
I think I was, yes. I always got very good marks. Mm-hmm. Well, in fact, I graduated from high school a year ahead of time because when there was the war was on then, and so they devised a program where you could go for your senior year all summer and you would graduate a year ahead of time because they needed women in the workplace because all the men were away at war. Mm-hmm. So you had to have 95 to 100 in your scores in your test. Wow. Or you couldn't, do that, and I did, so I decided I would do that, and I graduated a year ahead of time.
Wow. What was your favorite and least favorite subject?
My favorite was French and history. My least was math.
Did you have any heroes or role models as a kid?
I had my father. I'd say that was, I don't remember any others, mostly my father.
Was there any famous person that people at the time liked a lot?
No, when I was a kid, no. When I got a little older, I did like Humphrey Bogart in the movies. I liked Humphrey Bogart.
How did you spend your summer vacations?
Well, when I was younger, we went to Wildwood for quite a few weeks. We played, and then at home we played outside, games and all. We weren't allowed to go to pools because at that time infantile paralysis was going around and people didn't know what it came from. And a lot of people thought it was from the pools, the water. So my father wouldn't let us go to the pool.
Wow.
So we weren't allowed to go.
Oh.
So, you know, we go to a lake or the beach, but never pools.
Remember, what was the best gift you remember ever receiving as a kid?
The best gift I ever received, I remember as a kid, my friend made my first Holy Communion. My uncle gave me a cross and chain, and I thought it was beautiful. And then when I was in the 8th grade, my father brought me a ruby ring because that was my birthstone, which I immediately lost about 2 weeks later. They're the ones I remember best.
What big world events do you remember growing up? I'm sure there's a lot of them.
I remember the Second World War. Not that because we had air raid wardens going around because of the war. We had bond drives. This is when I was in high school, though. Mm-hmm. They had bond drives, and my grandpa, my husband, he had a car. He would drive around with a speaker and try to sell war bonds. Oh. Because you had ration cards. Things were rations like meat, sugar. Couldn't get them stockings, and people wore nylon stockings. They couldn't get them. But I forget what else. But I know sugar and.
Wait, why?
Well, because there was a war on, and you couldn't get those things like from other countries. Like the nylon came, the stockings. That was one thing, and I guess a lot of people were away at war, so they couldn't, I guess, produce enough. So
wow.
I don't really know all the reasons, but I remember that, and I remember the war, the air raid wardens. They're mostly, we didn't have television, and things like that, so we didn't know a lot that was going on like everyone does today.
Yeah. What inventions do you most remember?
Well, the most that I remember would have been the television, and that wasn't until I was married. I mean, it was invented before that, but most people didn't have one until 1950s. But I remember when I was a child, telephone. We didn't have a telephone in your house. At the corner was always a store, a drugstore, and they had booths with telephones in them, and your friend would call you on the phone there. And there were always boys outside hoping to make a little money. And if someone called you, the druggist would answer and go outside and say to one of the boys, Johnny or whatever, do you want to go and get Mrs. Carroll on the phone? And he'd say, okay. He'd run and tell him the address. And he'd run down and get you, and you'd give him a tip, and you'd answer the phone there. So that's the biggest thing I remember when you had your phone in your house.
When you were a teenager, what did you do for fun?
When I was a teenager, we used to go roller skating at the rink. We played music, it was fun. We used to do that quite a lot. And we went dancing. We danced a lot, did a lot of walking.
And how much was a movie then?
Well, I remember taking my sister and brother to the movie on Saturday, and it was 11 cents.
For all three?
It was 10 cents. Then they made it 11 cents.
So like 33 cents altogether?
Yeah.
Oh gosh. For when you went roller skating, did you have to pay something for that?
Yes. I don't remember how much that was. Not much, probably 25 cents. Although I remember going to the dance, but that was when I was like older, about 18. That was $1. And you had to be. The boys had to wear a suit. Had to be dressed. They had to have a coat and tie on. And we always wore dresses. So.
Did you ever get in trouble when you were a teenager?
Yes, I did. Well, the reason what happened was Daddy would take me to a dance or something, and my father, he was strict about that. I had to be home, and if we were late, I would be in trouble. And my father would tell Daddy, if you don't bring her home on time, she won't be able to go again. I remember my daddy had a car when we were in high school. No one had a car. We didn't have a car. Most people didn't. But Daddy's brother, Uncle Jimmy, he had the car. He went away to the war, and they left the car to him. And he would drive it over to our house for us to go to the movies. But I wasn't allowed to ride in the car, so we had to leave the car out front, and we'd go and take the L downtown to the movies. We didn't really care though. We knew that's what we had to do. So.
Were there any phases that were popular when you were a teenager, like as in like hair or anything like that?
Yes, I remember dresses were like, we had the little longer dresses. I always wore flowers or bows in my hair. That was a trend. We didn't have makeup, you know. I mean, there was makeup, but we didn't wear it. But we always put Vaseline on our eyelashes. I remember doing that. We always had lipstick, though.
I know you used to braid your hair too, right?
And I wore braids. We braided our hair, and then there was something. It was like a roll with ribbons on the end. You could put it in the back of your hair and roll it up, and you get like your hair would be. You see that in old movies.
Yeah.
And you'd tie it on top, and you couldn't see it because it was under your hair. You know. And we wore a pompadour.
What kind of store would you go to get clothes? Like, was it?
Well, there were. We would go to dress shops. There were quite a few dress shops that just sold things like that. If you went downtown, but that's when I was older. When I was a child, you went to different stores for everything. You went to the meat market for the meat. You went to the vegetable store for all the vegetables. And there was a store that sold butter and eggs. You went to all different stores. And the dresses, you went to a dress shop. You know.
I don't know. Did you ever learn to drive?
I never learned to drive. Although when I was first married, well, no, I guess I had a couple of children at the time, and I was going to take driving lessons. I decided. So Daddy calls this company. The man comes to pick me up. I go in the car. And I never forget, I get in the car. Now I know nothing about driving. He drives me a couple blocks. He stops the car and he says, "Now you have to get in the driver's seat." He says to me, "This is the brake, he explained a couple things to me. Okay, so he gets out, I go in the driver's seat. Now I start to drive, I know nothing. And we're driving along, everybody's blowing their horn at us. We go to a very busy section. And I said to him, I did have a few brains, so I said, "We're going down a hill, do you put the brake on?" He said, "Don't ask questions, you don't learn anything that way." So I did what he told me, but we got home. I could hardly walk when I got out of the car. My legs were going under me. And I went in the house and I said to Daddy, "Never again." And when he was telling me how he was going to quit his job, he hated it. So it was a very bad experience. So I think I never learned after that.
Did you have to have a permit to do that? Or
no?
No, so it was just license? You just went out and
got it? As far as I know. I mean, I don't really know much about it except... No, I didn't have to have a license then, no.
Wow. Did you have any dreams or goals when you graduated high school?
Well, I always wanted to be an archaeologist. That didn't happen. But I did want to be a nurse. And when I was in high school, they had a program. If you joined the Army, because the war was on, they would send you to teach you to be a nurse, and you had to spend 1 year in the Army for that. So I did want to do that, and I told my father, and my father said no. He didn't want me to do that. And I did, I listened to my father, and so I cried for about 2 weeks, and then I finally got over it. But I think he meant it for my own good. He wasn't being mean, but he didn't want me to go away in the Army,
Mm-hmm.
So that didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
But I was happy with my life, my husband and my children.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Did you go to college?
I did go to nursing school for almost a year. It's the Jefferson College of Nursing. I did go for almost a year. This was later on when I was 50 years old.
Oh.
Well, we moved up here. My eyes are watering. And I didn't work outside my home, but I decided at that time, when I was 50, I think it was 50 or 51, that I would have to get a job then, because our business went down in our grocery store and all. So I thought, well, I'll go to nursing school because that's what I always wanted to do.
Wow.
So I went to Temple and took a 4-hour test, and I passed, and they accepted me at the Jefferson School of Nursing. In fact, I still have a card with my picture for the library. And I got uniforms and a school loan, and I went to school for almost a year.
Wow.
But family problems came up and I couldn't stay. So I told the nurse who was in charge that I had to leave, and she said I could always come back because I did very good on the test and everything, you know. So I had that. That's,
I didn't know that.
yeah.
What was your first job?
My first job was when I was 16. I worked across the street at the drugstore making, behind the fountain, making ice cream sundaes and sodas.
How long did you work there?
Not long, because there was an incident in there with the druggist that wasn't too good, so I quit. And then I went, I had a job at a store on Kensington Avenue. That's where I met Grandpa. It was like a store, something like today's Walgreens in a way. And I worked there for about, a couple of years after school.
So the next question is, how did you meet your husband?
I met him at the store. It was called Humphrey's. It was, as I said, it was something like Walgreens. He was there from after school. He and his friends worked there, stocking the shelves and all. And I worked at the counter, and that's where I met him. And they told me later, when I came for my job, he already was there. He said, "That's the girl I'm going to marry."
And how did you guys start dating? You just
he asked
became
me
friends?
out for the movie to go out with him on a Friday night, you know. In those days too, you didn't go out with, you went with different, like, a boy would say to you, "Would you like to go out with me Friday night?" And I could say, "Well, I have a date Friday night." "Well, how about Saturday?" "Okay, I'll go with you Saturday." And that's what you did. And you went with one Friday, one Saturday. And I remember the first time he asked me, I said to him I'd go. And that was the beginning of the week. And then when Friday came, he's leaving the store where we worked. And he said, "Well, I'll pick you up tonight and I forgot. And I said, "Oh, I have to babysit," which I didn't, but I said, and he had a magazine in his hand, I never forget. And he put it under his arm and he said, "You've lost a friend forever." But I didn't really. He came back.
Did you actually have to babysit?
No.
Oh, well, you just didn't want to go?
Well, I forgot. and I wasn't going to just, get ready and go.
What was the first thing you noticed about him?
How nice he was. He was kind. And his eyes, he had beautiful eyes, brown eyes.
And you said on your first day you went to the movies?
We did.
Yeah.
And we used to go to get a place called Harry's for ice cream sodas. And so we probably went and had an ice cream soda.
What made him special or unique?
Well, I always said when he died he would fly right up to heaven, because he was the kindest man you would ever want to meet. I've never heard him say an unkind word about anyone. That's true, never. And if I even said anything, he would always say, "Oh, well, they didn't mean that," or this. But I'd say he was really good man. And he loved all his family, his children. He did. He loved them with all his heart. He worked very hard. when we first were married, he had a couple jobs always. And, you know, whatever job he had, he always rose to the top because he was such a hard worker. And he was honest, and people knew that. But he was very kind, very kind.
What do you miss about him?
Oh, everything. I miss everything because, you know, he really was sweet. I mean, he was really good to me and kind. I miss his humor. We used to go out and dance and have dinner, and we'd go dancing. But that's not, I mean, I miss that. I miss everything really about him. I miss him being here. And it's just the idea that he was here, you know. And he always held my hand. If you see any picture of him with me, he has his arm around me, or he's holding my hand. Even in church, he used to hold my hand. So I miss his kindness, and I just miss him.
How long were you guys dating before you got engaged?
I met him when I was 16, but I didn't just date him. I went out with other people. I guess I was, when he went away, he went in the Marine Corps. When he was 18. So I'd say 2 years.
How did you guys get engaged?
Oh, he was in the Marine Corps. He came home. It was on Christmas Eve, and we were taking a walk, and I'll never forget, it was snowing, and we were taking a walk, and that's when he asked me.
Did he have a ring?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you still have the ring?
I lost it.
You lost that. Yeah, I thought you did.
I did. I lost. He gave me a couple I lost. I was very bad about jewelry.
Did your parents approve of you two dating?
They did approve. They really liked him, but my father, when he would come to our house to visit, we had a house that was straight through, you know, you could see from the, and my father would sit on a chair in the kitchen where he'd be sitting there pretending he was doing something else, but we were in the living room, he could see everything we were doing. And I had to be home by a certain time, you know, but they approved, they liked him.
Did his parents approve of you guys dating?
Well, I think they did, but his mother, my mother-in-law and I loved her dearly, but at first, I think she was not too happy because Daddy took care of her, and I think she just was afraid she was going to lose him. Mm-hmm. So at first she wasn't, but we became the best of friends. She was good.
When and where did you get married?
We got married in July the 2nd, 1949, mm-hmm. in the Ascension Church. It's on Westmoreland Street in Kensington.
Mm-hmm. And then did you guys have a reception after?
We did. In those days, you know, when you went to church mass, you couldn't eat from the night before. You couldn't eat from 12 o'clock to eat, until after communion. So we had a mass at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then we had a breakfast at a restaurant for the bridal party and your parents, and then because of you hadn't eaten, you know, from the night before. That was right after the mass, and then we had a reception that night at the Legion Post, American Legion Post.
And how old were you?
I was 21. July the 11th.
How old was he?
22.
Was that older or younger for the time?
No, I was older.
You were older. So most of your friends were already married?
Yeah.
How many children did you have?
15 children.
Yes. Now I know you're not going to get into each of them, but generally, how did you decide to name them?
Generally, let's see. My husband I named Joseph. I named most of them for the Blessed Mother, Teresa, Saint Teresa. Yeah. Some of them I liked, you know. And Katie I named after me, finally, at the end. Did you
have any idea that you would have so many kids?
I never thought about that. Mm-hmm. I never did. I believed a certain way, and but I never set out to have any certain number. But like I always say, who would I send back?
Do you know anyone that has more kids than you?
No.
No.
I know a couple people who've had almost as many. when we had the store, there were a couple of families in the neighborhood that had, I forget, 12, something like that.
I know, like now, when I say that, it's really crazy, but at the time, was it that crazy?
No, it was a little more than most, but most people there were many people that had quite a lot of children.
What was the best and hardest part about raising your kids?
Well, the best part was having them. I mean, I loved having my family, and I loved them all so much, and I was really happy with all of them, so that was the best. Just to have them was, I think. The hardest is when they were teenagers, and they were doing all kinds of things, and I had to keep my eyes open 24 hours a day. But I'd say I was pretty lucky. Things happened, like in every family, but basically they all did good. They all turned out good.
What makes you proud of your kids?
I'm very proud of my children because I think they're all kind and loving people. They're very good to everyone. And I think kindness is one of my very important, especially today's world. I don't see a lot of it in a lot of people, but I think that's why and they're all done well for themselves, and they all care about one another and about other people, and I think that's the most important, nicest thing about them all.
That's true. What's the best thing about being a parent and a grandparent?
The best thing about it is you're surrounded by all the wonderful people who love you and who you love, and no matter what the world is going on in the world, you feel so good when you're around all of them, and it's such a nice feeling to know you have all those people who care about you and about one another. I think that's the nicest thing.
Do you know the meaning of your family name?
It's pronounced Cianchetta in Italy. I think it's something to do with horses. I'm not sure.
We'll have to look that up.
I think that's something to do with horses.
And so it was Cianchetta, or how do you say it over here?
Cianchetta.
Cianchetta. And then they cut it.
In Italy, it's pronounced Cianchetta. Cianchetta.
But then your dad cut it, right, when he came to America?
Oh, my father. Well, when I was older, my father changed it to Cinchetta. He took off the A's. Only the reason my father did that was because he opened he wanted to have a neon sign business, and people told him that with his Italian name, a lot of people were prejudiced and wouldn't come to buy signs from him. So he did it for business reasons, although everyone was upset with him because we didn't want him to change it, but he felt that he had to do it for business.
I didn't know that. I thought when he came here, the family cut it off.
No, my name was Cianchetta when I went to school.
So how old were you when it changed?
I think I was in high school.
Oh, wow. And you had to say the new version? You had to say Cinchet?
I had to, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Because he changed it legally.
Wow.
Huh. Yeah.
I did not know that. I thought you grew up with Cinchet.
No, I didn't.
Oh. Have you ever had any nicknames?
Well, my nickname is Cassie. That's usually what they called me all my life.
Did you like that nickname?
I do.
Yeah. How are you like your father or mother, or unlike them?
Well, my father, I think he was I think I'm calm and quiet like he was. I think I am. I'm not artistic like he was, although my sister Marie was, and my brother. And my mother, I don't know what I'm like with my mother. I like to walk. She walked all over the place, and I always like to walk. But I don't know if I'm like her in too many ways. She liked to laugh, and I like to laugh. I think things that are funny.
You'd say you were more like your dad?
I think so.
Yeah. What was most important to your parents?
And my father, his family was most important to my father. He was very family oriented man. He was so kind to us, and I'm sure my sister Roseanne would agree. He was very kind. He did everything for us. He took us out to buy clothes and everything when we were little. And he worked hard to make a living for us also. And he took good care of my mother and us. I think his family was most important.
What are your 3 best and worst qualities?
Oh, I'd have to think about that. But my worst qualities, I think, is I'm stubborn. I know that. I'm very stubborn. And sometimes I worry about things that aren't necessary to worry about.
And then what are your best ones?
Best? Well, I guess, I don't know if it's a good or a bad quality, but I feel sorry for everybody. I do. I can't help it. Mm-hmm. Even people in prison. I can't watch a show with people in prison. I feel so sorry for them. I like to cook. I don't. It's not a quality, but I did love play the piano, music. Mm-hmm. I can't think of any. I don't have any good qualities.
Oh, stop it. If you had to pick, what would be your favorite book and movie?
My favorite book?
Mm-hmm. I know that's probably hard for you.
Well, I'll tell you, one of my favorites was The French Lieutenant's Woman. I always remember that. I love that book. And I liked Man's Search for Meaning. I always liked that book.
How many books do you think you've read?
Oh, hundreds. Hundreds. I love to read.
What was your favorite movie, or what is your favorite movie?
I like Gone with the Wind. That's one of my favorites. I liked Mary Poppins. I love that movie.
Do you have a favorite song?
I like Pavarotti to singing. I like Louis Armstrong, but It's a Wonderful World. I love that song. Mm-hmm. That's my favorite.
Who is someone in history that you admire?
I admired President Roosevelt. I thought he was a good man. I admired the people in our country who were Thomas Jefferson, Washington. I think all those people were very good. The Pope is my favorite. My favorite. Pope Francis.
If you could have 3 wishes, what would they be?
3 wishes. Well, I always pray, and I wish that all my children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren will be healthy and happy and have good lives. That's one wish. I wish that no one would ever be mean to another one, especially at all in my family. I won't want anyone ever to be unkind to another member of the family. I want them always to be friends. That's 2. 3, I don't know. I'm very lucky. I have everything that I need. I have all people that I love. Everyone is so kind to me. I can't think of anything else. I wish there'd be peace in the world. That's what I wish. And I wish that everyone would love God and the Blessed Mother, because that's what helped me through my life.
Mm-hmm. Okay. If you won $1 million tomorrow, what would you do with the money?
If I won $1 million, I would divide it up with all of my family and give money to my church. That's about it.
What is your most cherished family tradition?
Well, my favorite tradition is I love Christmas best of all. So I love when everyone's together at Christmas. We have a Christmas party. And before we had the party, everyone came to my house for Christmas. And we had a show. I loved having the shows. Mm-hmm. So that's my favorite, when they're all performing the shows. And even now when we have the Christmas party, we still have a little show. Mm-hmm. And that's my favorite.
What is the most difficult thing that ever happened to you, and how did you deal with it?
The most difficult thing that ever happened to me was when my son Jerry died. It was very hard for me to handle it at first, because I couldn't believe it was true. In fact, I stayed home. I was working then, so I stayed home, and I would go out and I would wonder why everyone was smiling when I was so sad. But eventually, I learned that, God was with me. I always depended on God and the Blessed Mother a lot. And I'd say they were the two main forces in my life that have helped me all my life, since I was young, even when I was a little girl. So that's what helped me. God and the Blessed Mother helped me through it.
What, if anything, would you have done differently?
Well, let's see. I would have still married grandma. I would have changed that. I would still have all my children. I don't know who I would send back. So, I think I might have changed in some of the things when I was younger. I might have changed some of the things how I acted with my children. Because as you get older, you get a little wiser, I think, about things. So I may have changed some of the rules I had for the younger ones, for the older ones that I would have had for the younger ones.
Is there any advice that your parents or grandparents gave you that you still remember?
My father always told me to, be myself and always be, happy with what I was doing. And my mother told me, though, to marry a rich man, but I didn't. He was rich in many things. But they just wanted me to be happy.
How do you define a good life?
A good life, well, to me, a good life is if you're married, you have a good husband, and if not, you have good friends, and still you have good friends either way, and have children add to your life. And I think that the main thing in life is to love one another and to be kind. And so I think if you have a life like that, if you're with people who are that way, who are loving and kind, and if you teach your children that, basically no matter how much money you have or what you do, if you don't have true love in your life and aren't kind to people, and I think your life would be very sad. So I think basically to be kind and loving and caring and to help other people and take good care of your family, that's what I think is a good life.
If you had the power to solve one problem in the world, what would it be and why?
Well, the one problem I think in the world is the same as in a family. I think if the world would be kinder, if all the different countries would be kinder to one another and listen to one another, there wouldn't be wars. And war is one of the worst things we could have. So I think if they could find a solution to that, that would be the biggest problem, I think, that we have. And I think if more people depended on God, they would be more peace in the world.
What advice would you give future generations of your family?
Well, after I'm gone, I would hope that they would all be kind to one another, love one another, take care of one another, and stay together, and always have God and the Blessed Mother in their life.
What is your most treasured possession, if you have one, and why?
I really don't have, I'm not really having many material things that I can think of, except my rosaries. I always have them with me all the time, so they're my most treasured.
Okay, so for this part, I'm going to name, I don't think I have the order of everyone right, but I'm gonna name each kid, and if you can just say your favorite thing about them in like 1 or 2 words, it might be hard, but just your favorite thing, okay? Joseph. Mm-hmm.
I would say Joseph is very kind. I don't think he's ever said a mean thing about anyone in his life.
Ree.
she's very kind. She helps everyone who needs help. She goes around and she goes to help anyone who needs her. So I think that's a very wonderful quality.
Cass.
Kathleen. Kathleen always is happy and makes you laugh. Makes me laugh a lot, and I think she has a very good attitude about life.
Mare.
Mary Ann's very sweet and kind also, and I don't think she's ever said any mean thing about anyone.
Teresa.
Teresa's very good, and she is very deep. She's very smart, and she's very caring about everyone, and she's a very good companion.
John.
John. John is very kind. He's also funny, and he's takes good care of everyone, and I think, and he's a hard worker. Actually, all of my children are kind, I think, and hard workers. I can say that about everyone.
Michael.
Michael is very sweet. Oh, he won't like me saying that he's sweet. But he is a very good person, and he's a hard worker, and he's funny too, can be very funny. And he's another one who's very kind to everyone.
Jerry.
Everyone loved Jerry. He was another very naive person, funny, and he was very caring too.
Patty.
Patty is very sweet and kind, and she takes very good care of me when she comes here to visit me. She's a very good caretaker, I would say.
Kevin.
Kevin is very kind, and he will do anything to help everyone. And he's very, very good to me. He has a very kind heart.
Margaret.
Margaret is very sweet and kind and caring and very easy to get along with. And I don't think she ever would hurt anyone either.
Paul.
Paul's funny. Paul makes me laugh. He's funny. He's kind. He has some good stories, and he's very good at helping you solve problems.
Gina.
Gina is very good and kind, and she's she's a nurturer. She's a very good nurturer. She takes care of people, and that's why she's such a very good nurse, I'm sure.
Chrissy.
She's very kind and good to me also, and she's very nurturing, and I think she's another one who reaches out to everyone and wants to help everyone.
And Katie.
And Katie's sweet. She's quiet, but she's very caring, and she's a very good person. And she's good. She's also very good to be around. In fact, I have to say about all of my children, they're all kind and they're all hard workers. So everyone is always kind to me, and everyone has always been very good to me. So after I pass away, no one will ever have to have any regrets because they've all been very, very good to me.
Okay, now this, I don't know if I'll actually include this, but I kind of just wanted this for me. One of my favorite stories is the one with your father-in-law. Do you think you could tell that?
Which one?
The one where he passed away, that one.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was married, and Joseph was a baby. I was pregnant with Rosemarie. She was born in August. This was in April. And I lived with my mother-in-law and father-in-law. Well, my father-in-law had heart disease, and they said he had a year to live. So he didn't work, but he he would go down the avenue for a walk. And when I lived with my mother-in-law, she had certain things she did. Every Thursday we cleaned upstairs. On Friday we cleaned downstairs, and I would help her. Every day I went to the avenue for a walk, and I took Joseph in his coach. And this was a Friday, we were cleaning downstairs, and something came in my head. My father-in-law said he was going down the avenue to get his hair cut. So we said fine. So he left and went down, started off down the avenue. Joseph was on the porch, the sun porch in his coach, and something came in my head and said to me, "You have to go down the avenue." So I didn't question. It was like someone was leading me. I didn't question it. I just said to my mother-in-law, "I have to go down the avenue." And I said, "I'm not taking Joseph with me. I'm going to leave him on the porch," which I never did before. And she said, "All right." So I quickly, and I knew I had to hurry. Something told me to hurry. So I go out of the house and I start walking down the avenue. And while I'm going down, on the other side of the street, I see my best friend. Her name was Marie Fawcett. And I always talked to her. Well, I automatically turned my head away so she wouldn't see me, which was unusual. And I kept on going. And when I got to the corner of Kensington and Allegheny Avenue, there was a big crowd of people. And being pregnant, I would normally not go into the crowd. And I just said, "Let me in, my father-in-law's in there." And he was laying on the pavement. He had died, and they had sent for an ambulance. Now, if I hadn't hurried, I would have missed the ambulance. And so I was there, and I knelt down and talked to him. I don't know if he heard me or not because I couldn't tell. But I went in the ambulance with him. But that's why I had to hurry, it seems. So that was very unusual. But that's all what happened to me. It was all true. It was just like an automatic thing. I just did it, like as if someone was telling me what to do.
Wow.
And someone told me later that then I had to go to the hospital with them, and I called the priest, but I couldn't call anyone at home, because I didn't want to tell them on the phone, and then we didn't have cell phones or anything. So I had to go home and tell them. But someone told me that probably I was chosen to find him because maybe no one else could have maybe handled it. Mm-hmm. Because I was calmer, so wow. Maybe.
That's crazy. Were his eyes open and everything when you got to him?
No, his eyes were not open, no. But I didn't know if he was still alive or not. Mm-hmm. I couldn't tell because they had the ambulance came. They were taking him right away. But so I spoke to him anyway because sometimes I thought he might have heard me, but so he'd know somebody was with him. Wow. And he was a very good man. I think he never wanted to be alone, so maybe God felt he needed somebody to be next to him. So wow.
It's amazing. I love that story. It's so cool. Is there any last message you would like to say for this?
Well, I think just what I said before. When I'm not here, I would hope that everyone would be kind to one another, each and every one. Reach out to one another, always love one another and help one another, and always stay together, and always have God and the Blessed Mother in their life. And that's mainly what I would like everyone to know.
Well, that's it, Grandma.
And also, everyone's always been very kind and good to me.
Thank you, Grandma.
You're welcome. It was nice.
You'll get the first screening when it's done.
Okay.
I just keep